All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Dr. E. Today's date is November 2nd, 2022. And if you're listening to the sound of my voice, that means you were blessed to see another day. And for that, all praise, honor, and glory is due to the Most High God of Israel, for now and forever. All right, shalom, everyone. Welcome to all my new subscribers. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and select all so you'll be notified every time I upload a new presentation. I want to thank you all for taking the time to comment on the post, to like the post, the videos, because all that helps with the algorithm. And I really, really sincerely appreciate you all taking the time to input and give information, and that, just keeping it moving. So thank you all. Today's topic, well, at least one of the topics I'm going to discuss today, I got a couple of them in the pipeline. It looks like the Supreme Court is moving towards striking down affirmative action. Now, obviously, being a very intelligent and well-read man, well-traveled, I understand and know what affirmative action means and what it's supposed to mean. But being on this earth for 54, almost going on 55 years in another 2 months, I've never been on the receiving end, or I've never received any type of, favor from that, and truthfully, because I've always felt that people are going to hire who they want, regardless of background. And that speaks to me personally. I won't get into that. But people are going to hire who they want. Colleges are going to admit who they want. And until someone actually says, okay, you know what, I'm not even finna go there with y'all, and file a lawsuit for discrimination or whatever the case may be, it's gonna continue. So I really don't understand or really know what striking down affirmative action is going to do, because I really don't think it's really done much, to be honest with you. I'm just keeping it real. Me as a black man, I felt I've always had to go above and beyond, right? Like in school, even though I hung out with what society would call the low lives, the little gangsters, whatever case may be, but we had more in common than we didn't. People couldn't understand that. But my thing is, I'm still a black person. It doesn't matter, right? My point is, they don't see any difference. You understand? Ice Cube said it a long time ago. My skin is my sin. You could be an honor roll student, 4.0 GPA, all that, but they still look at you by the complexion of your skin. You understand? And so, before I get into the Supreme Court deal and striking affirmative action down, because my thing is, all right, they already struck down Roe versus Wade. I think about striking down affirmative action. The stench of Trump is, it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, wow. What next? Interracial marriage? What I'm saying? Like, how far is this conservative court going to go? But not to go off on a tangent. We're going to identify what is affirmative action. So let's get into that real quick. For those of you who may be a little fuzzy, about what affirmative action is, or what it means and what it's supposed to mean, let's check it out real quick. Okay, affirmative action, by definition, involves a set of policies and practices within a government or organization seeking to include particular groups based on their gender, race, sexuality, creed, or nationality in areas in which such groups are underrepresented, such as education and employment. Historically and internationally, support for affirmative action has sought to achieve goals such as bridging inequalities in employment and pay, increasing access to education, and promoting diversity, and redressing apparent past wrongs, harms, or hindrances. The nature of affirmative action policies varies from region to region and exists on a spectrum from a hard quota to merely targeting encouragement for increased participation. Some countries use a quota system, reserving a certain percentage of government jobs, political positions, and school vacancies for members of a certain group. An example of this is the reservation system that they have in India. In some other jurisdictions where quotas are not used, minority group members are given preference or special consideration in selection processes. In the United States, affirmative action in employment and education has been the subject of legal and political controversy. In 2003, the Supreme Court of the United States, in Grutter versus Bollinger, held that the University of Michigan Law School could consider race as a plus factor when evaluating applicants holistically and maintain the prohibition on the use of quotas. In the United States, affirmative action is controversial, and public opinion on the subject is divided. Supporters of affirmative action argue that it promotes equality and representation for groups which are socioeconomically disadvantaged or have faced historical discrimination or oppression. Opponents of affirmative action have argued that it is a form of reverse discrimination, that it tends to benefit the most privileged within minority groups at the expense of the least fortunate within majority groups, or that when applied to universities, it can hinder minority students by placing them in courses too difficult for them. Really? Okay. In a nutshell, everyone, that is affirmative action. In theory, yes, I wholeheartedly 120% agree with the concept of what affirmative action is supposed to mean, right? And those saying that this is a form of reverse discrimination, man, they're the ones that are most likely benefiting, not, benefiting from what they look like anyway, right? So take that with a grain of salt. But I just feel like, on the other hand, I see it twofold. I see what it means conceptually, and I embrace that. But at the same time, I mean, why do we even need that? Like, and that's just it. If everyone was based on their qualifications, on their test scores, on their academic achievement, then I think there would be no talk about any of this. But the reality is, like I said in the opening of this presentation, as a black person, even as a female, and don't even talk about female blacks, because that's double, or female, or male blacks, because we got two things against us, right? It doesn't matter. They don't care about what your GPA or you graduated the top of your class and this and that. They don't look at that, but they should, because if they did, then there would be no need for stuff like affirmative action. Same thing with jobs. You're supposed to hire the most qualified person for the job, right? I'm gonna share a little quasi secret with you all, because I'm in human resources management, right? I have a master's in human resources management. I teach and have taught human resources management as an adjunct professor for many universities. I have, friends in human resources, right? And I'm gonna share something with you all. Some jobs say that you can get in trouble with HR if you talk about how much you make and this and that. That's not in place because they actually care that other people know, or about what you make or what you don't make. They don't want you as a minority, as a black or as a female, to see how disproportionate the person who looks different from you may have less qualifications, but they're getting paid way more than you. They don't want you to see in other words, they don't want the minorities to see how disproportionate they're being paid and compensated in relation to their other counterparts, if you know what I'm saying. That's why they don't want you talking about what you make on the job. That's a little insight that no one really knows or whatever. But I know a lot of the inner work, and that's why I got into human resources. I said, you know what, I want to get into where they make the decisions at. I want to learn. You understand? That's why I kind of chose human resources, right? And I'm going to share another honest thing with you all. The reason why I had to start teaching human resource management in college is because no one wanted to give me an opportunity as a black man to be a human resources manager. Period. And that's just being straight up honest. That's why I had to teach it. So I can teach human resources management in college, professor and all that, but I'm not worthy enough to get an opportunity to be an HR manager somewhere. And that's my truth. You understand? And I know my grades, my transcripts, everything, stellar. 4.0. I'm a member of 2 international honor societies. You name it. I'm certified human resources consultant, master's, human resources management, all this stuff, right? And they don't care. They do not care. They don't care nothing about me being a war veteran and none of that. They don't care about none of that. Because at the end of the day, all they see is what I look like. You understand? So yeah, in theory, I applaud and salute affirmative action because it's necessary to try to even the playing field. But I don't think they've been playing fair ball anyway, even with affirmative action in place. So that's why I said, what the hell? What's the use? Hell, strike it down. He ain't been doing no good no way, as far as I'm concerned. But it just looks like it's going to be a free fall. So let's go ahead and get into this article about why they feel that the Supreme Court is real close to striking down affirmative action. Wow, let's get it. Okay, credit for this article, I'm citing a Mr. Lawrence Hurley from MSNBC News. Actually, no, it just says NBC News, but I'm citing him as the reference. All right, here it goes. It says conservative Supreme Court justices on Monday indicated they are willing to end the explicit consideration of race in college admissions as they weighed cases challenging affirmative action policies at the University of North Carolina and Harvard University. Members of the court's conservative majority questioned the legal rationale for allowing the practice and probed to what extent universities could enact new quote-unquote race-neutral admissions policies aimed at improving racial diversity. Some justices, however, indicated they would be willing to allow applicants to discuss their racial identity in some form as part of essays touching upon their experiences, such as examples of overcoming discrimination. Liberal justices, who are in the minority, defended the use of race in admissions, citing the importance of diversity on campus and the difficulty of achieving that goal without any consideration of race. Affirmative action introduced to redress historic discrimination has been a contentious issue for years, strongly supported by educational institutions and corporate America as vital to fostering diversity, and condemned by conservatives as anti-ethical to the notion that racial equality means that all races are treated the same. The Supreme Court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, heard back-to-back oral arguments in the UNC and Harvard cases, in cases brought by a group called Students for Fair Admissions, led by conservative activist Ed Blum. A ruling is due by the end of June. At various points during the almost 5 hours of oral arguments, conservative justices expressed hostility to explicit consideration of race in an application. Yeah. Quote, "What do you learn from mere checking of the box?" Justice Samuel Alito asked UNC lawyer Ryan Park. But some conservatives seemed more open to at least some recognition of an applicant's race as part of the process. If box checking is not allowed, would it be acceptable if Harvard was, quote, allowed to take into consideration what an applicant would say in an essay about having to confront discrimination growing up and how he or she did that? Chief Justice John Roberts asked Cameron Norris, the lawyer challenging Harvard's policy. Norris said such expressions of racial identity could be lawfully considered by the university. Conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett, a former professor at Notre Dame Law School, was among those who seemed sympathetic to consideration of what she called a student's experiential statement. Never even seen that word. Hell, that touched upon race. Sorry about that, y'all. As opposed to the box checking referenced by Alito. The questions asked by Roberts and Barrett and similar comments from another conservative, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, indicated they were looking toward what kind of race-neutral policies aimed at fostering diversity could be considered if the court's an explicit consideration of race. Conservative justices appeared skeptical that universities would ever conclude that their diversity targets could be met exactly without considering race, thereby creating a conflict with the Supreme Court's own 2003 ruling that said affirmative action would no longer be needed after 25 years. That's a lie. Barrett wondered if the 2003 ruling was grossly optimistic and thinking that race might no longer need to be considered after the quarter-century aspirational deadline. Quote, what if there's no end? End quote, she asked. Conservative Justice Clarence Thomas questioned whether universities have a compelling interest in diversity, while fellow conservatives, Justice Neil Gorsuch, expressed concern that the goal of achieving diversity was akin to having racial quotas, which the court has previously prohibited. Yeah, here we go. Gorsuch also noted how Harvard, as part of its explanation of what constitutes a diverse class, includes children of wealthy donors, talented athletes, and those who have parents who attended the university. He expressed surprise that Harvard considered it vital to its diversity goals to have a competitive squash team. Quote, I'm not making it up, end quote, Gorsuch said. As affirmative action supporters rallied outside the courthouse, the first oral argument on UNC's policy began with liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor questioning the challenger's lawyer, Patrick Strawbridge, on how college administrators can assess applicants from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds without considering race. Quote, sometimes race does correlate to some experience and not others, Sotomayor said. If you are black, you are more likely to be in an under-resourced school. You are more likely to be taught by teachers who are not as qualified as others. You are more likely to be viewed as having less academic potential, end quote. Liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson pushed back on Strawbridge's description of UNC's process, saying race is never considered alone. Quote, you haven't demonstrated or shown one situation in which all they look at is race and take from that stereotypes and other things. They are looking at the full person, she said. I don't know about that, man. She sounds like she's a little. This is the black female who just got there by Biden. This is her talking. The university is not solely considering race, quote, just because somebody checks a box, she added. I totally disagree with that. Jackson also questioned whether ending consideration of race would create new legal issues. She wondered, for example, whether it could be discriminatory if black students descended from slaves were not allowed to speak about their family backgrounds on the applications, but white students from North Carolina were able to discuss theirs. While the white applicant would be able to have his family background considered and valued, the black applicant wouldn't be able to because his story in many ways bound up with his race, she said, end quote. Liberal Justice Alina Kagan, the former dean of Harvard Law School, strongly defended the value of racial diversity on campus, saying that colleges are pipelines to leadership in our society, end quote. The group's lawyers have asked the justices to overturn the 2003 ruling, Grutter versus Bollinger, in which the court said race could be considered as a factor in the admissions process because universities had a compelling interest in maintaining a diverse campus. The legal debate was left unresolved by a fractured 1978 Supreme Court ruling in which the justices prohibited racial quotas but left the door open to some consideration of race. In 2016, the last time the Supreme Court ruled on affirmative action, the justices narrowly upheld the admissions policy at the University of Texas on a 4-3 vote with conservative Justice Anthony Kennedy, who has since retired, casting the deciding vote. If affirmative action is ended, those defending the practice say race-neutral policies aimed at achieving diversity will often fail, leading to a decline in black and Hispanic enrollment. The challengers point to examples in the 9 states that already ban the practice as evidence that consideration of race is not essential. Yeah. And I'm going to say this. You all can tell me what you all think in the comment section. But it looks like we're going backwards, as a country and as a nation. And all this is a result of who was the last president. Really, I mean, he spread a lot of bad seeds all over the United States, man, and we're seeing it. We're seeing the results of that. Like I said, they struck down Roe v. Wade. It looks like they're about to strike down affirmative action. I mean, what next? Striking down civil rights. I mean, striking down interracial marriage, which affects Justice Jackson and Clarence Thomas. They're both married to they both have white spouses. So I mean, what's next? Really, think about it. I mean, it's like we're heading in the wrong direction. It's like we're going backwards. We're supposed to be progressive. We're supposed to be moving forward, right? But it looks like we're moving backwards. So anyway, that's enough. Y'all tell me what y'all think, man. And hope y'all enjoyed the article or whatever and the presentation. And until next time, this is Dr. E signing off, saying shalom, everyone.